started the adaptive Grandslam as I was injured in Afghanistan serving in the British Army in the parachute regiment. I went through quite a challenging process then in medical discharge and learning to live with disability with a paralysed arm. But I thought there's an opportunity to establish an organisation that provides an environment where we can put people through challenging experiences to enable them to grow, and at the same time surround them with people that have got experience that would help them achieve whatever it is they want to achieve.
Before my military service, cycling was one of the passions that I had. I've been cycling since I was a kid. When I joined the military, I joined in 2006 at the age of 21. I pretty much went to Afghanistan straight after basic training on a foot patrol. Stepped on an improvised explosive device. Even though we cleared the ground, we just didn't see it. I then was taken up in intensive care, having lost both my legs, one above, one below the knee, lost some fingers and a few other bits and pieces. I also contracted pneumonia and swine flu, but I managed to pull through.
My recovery journey was quite long, easy 6 years. I went through the whole Headley Core process like most of the guys. The thing with rehab is boring and it can be quite mundane and really hard to keep going.
When you get medically discharged, you lose that camaraderie. You lose your guys, your friends. Getting back involved with the AGS, it brings it all back together. Now I'm ex-military myself. I was injured in Canada. Next thing I knew, I was just fastly medically discharged. And I lost a bit of purpose. I come on one of the weekends and I soon realised I wasn't as fit as I was. I got to get more involved. I said, is there any way I can support you and help you? And then they said, we need a support vehicle driver.
You know, I've always been wanting to get back into some form of sport, and got this crazy idea of cycling a route called the Tour Divide after reading about it in Guy Martin's book. Long story short, he then said, actually the AGS might be interested.
For me, there's two goals for the Great Divide Expedition. Obviously, the personal goal is to cycle the full distance. May last year was the first time I got on a bike in 15 years. All the research we've been doing on this suggests that pretty experienced cyclists struggle to complete this. So, to complete it will be an achievement. More importantly for me is to establish a level of experience in organising cycling events. We've been doing mountaineering events for a long time now and we're experienced at that, but there are limitations on what people we can take in the mountains based on the risk assessments that we put in place and ultimately what level of disability people have. It's challenging when you're working with a group of disabled people because the disabilities are all very different. We're not in the habit of setting people up for failure. We want them to succeed on these expeditions. We then need to put a level of support around that individual with that person's disability. So that means individualised training programmes. It means us expecting a certain level of commitment on that individual's part. And the psychological aspect of what we're asking them to do as well. No amputee's ever done it. No disabled person's ever done it. Regardless of how resilient we're trying to make the guys and the team, that will still play on people's mind. It's one thing doing big days and a 4,400 kilometre journey when you're able-bodied. It's another thing doing it when you've got a limb, 2 limbs missing, paralysis, burns, and some of these injuries are hidden, they're not seen. But the reality is, whether it's a mountain or a cycling trip or a South Pole or a North Pole trip, nature doesn't care about your disability. You've got to be able to do it.
With having the loss of limbs, body's got to work a lot harder to produce the same amount of power. When I'm on my normal bike, I only have my glutes to propel with, so that already puts me at a big disadvantage, but my heart rate is phenomenally high in order to be able to produce that power. So obviously sweat rates increase quite a lot, meaning a lot more stops, having to deal with prosthetics.
For some of our amputees, they'll frequently talk about things like the importance of getting the socket fit right, getting the right equipment in place, all the little things that we take for granted as an able-bodied person.
It's a case of just trusting my preparation, making sure that I train hard enough so my lungs and heart can cope with it.
Gravel biking in particular opens up a new world for us, and we can control that risk and that environment to a level that we just can't on 8,000 metre peaks or technical mountaineering challenges.
To get back on a bike as a 41-year-old, I've got to keep moving, and when Martin approached us about this cycle, it was right down my street.
And one thing that's quite clear from my position in particular is something like this, it wouldn't be possible on my own. So I think it's probably the most important thing is to have that team around you.
I've never done an expedition solo. I wouldn't want to. I much prefer doing it as a team. But the joy you get of working in a genuinely high-performance team in a genuinely challenging environment is far greater than doing anything on your own.
We seem to get energy from individuals that do struggle, because then you find you're not thinking about yourself because you're assisting others, even though deep down you're as in much pain as them. And I think with the group, it's just easier to kind of do the distance.
For me as a team leader, I've got to create an atmosphere where people can feel that they're able to speak openly about their injuries and they trust us to be able to respond in a positive manner. But more importantly, we put an action plan in place to alleviate the concerns that they've got.
Military background helps quite a lot because weather-wise, we're used to bad weather and having to operate in bad weather, so it kind of is what it is. And then most of the time when you're on it, focusing on what's ahead and just think, well, it's wet, it's cold, it's hard, but just keep going.
I think it's just experience in terms of being hit with head-on wind. There's nothing you can do. You've just got to keep pedalling. Just keep pedalling, and everything comes to an end. And I'm a big advocate of that. Everything comes to an end, no matter how painful or grueling it might be. It will stop. Keep going on and just trying to keep the morale high, because the guy next to you is bloody feeling just as bad as you, but he might not show it.
If someone has a life-changing injury, there can be times when it can be quite psychologically challenging. You've got a lot of change that you're dealing with suddenly. You may have lost your job, you may have lost a level of physical fitness, you may have lost a level of psychological fitness, and it takes a fair amount of courage on an individual's part and driving determination to get from that hospital bed to doing something that is a genuine challenge again. And I think documenting this gives people an opportunity to see that there's others with a similar disability to themselves who have been through a similar level of hardship than they have, and share the lessons.
Acceptance was probably the biggest thing for me. Obviously, in a military background, you're used to teamwork anyway. Sometimes you can't quite take as much of a leading role, perhaps, is what I did. So it's kind of accepting that as well, and just think, actually, I'm a bit out of my depth here or whatever, so I probably listen to others, maybe ask for help.
The AGS, its target audience is someone in a hospital bed, someone who's just had something horrendous happen. Over the few years I've been involved, I've met people who just didn't think their lives could move forward, and I've explained to them there's a future for everyone.
I know from my own personal experience, having spoken to people, they didn't even know that cycling's possible for amputees. I know that you can get hand bikes, but obviously on my upright bike with prosthetics, people didn't even realise you can do stuff like that. But I think when these things are documented and shown, it's not just a disabled community that's inspired, it's everybody around them as well. And often families suffer just as much as the person who's injured, because they're also having to deal with it, they're also having to be there, and if they can see what is possible, it inspires them as well. And I think it's a good way to lift the entire community as a whole.
The AGS seems to have a real knack of finding them individuals that really are struggling and bringing out the best in them and actually changing their lives.
Best part about it is anyone registered disabled can apply, and it doesn't matter what's happened to you, they'll welcome everyone in, and everyone slowly gets better. If you see people's progress and stories, it's just outstanding.
That's what mine's great at, literally encouraging people to get out there, give it a go, and you know what, if you fail, you fail. If you don't step outside your front door, you'll never know.
And you can support each other, which we've always done since day one. How are we going to collectively work as a team to make sure that the team gets from point A to point B safely, in good stead, and that is a far more satisfying experience than doing anything on your own.
Don't give up, just find the right people and just kind of keep the faith that actually you can still achieve a lot of things.